My wife cheated on me with our neighbor, then forged my signature to steal over $250, $0 in the estate we inherited from my parents. Now she's claiming I kidnapped our kids during the custody battle. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy writing about how my wife, Lisa, turned out to be a complete piece of trash, but here I am. The thing is, I caught her cheating on me with our neighbor, Mike, and it was nothing like I expected. I mean, I always knew Lisa was a little bitchy and manipulative, but I never thought she'd go this far, screwing around, lying, then stealing from us right under my nose. This story is long, complicated, and honestly pretty messed up, but I need to get it out because I've never felt so betrayed in my life. We'd been together for about 10 years, married for 6, and at first everything seemed fine. We had a decent life, 2 kids, a nice house in the suburbs, and I worked my ass off to provide. Lisa was always a little high maintenance, but I figured that was just her personality. She liked nice things, spoiled herself with designer clothes and expensive vacations. She was also the queen of emotional manipulation, always playing the victim when she didn't get her way, twisting words and making me feel guilty for everything. Still, I loved her, or at least I thought I did. Things started to change about 6 months ago. She became more distant, less interested in what I was doing. She'd brush off my questions about her day, sometimes even lie about where she was going. I'd catch her sneaking her phone away when she thought I wasn't looking, and she'd get defensive if I pressed her. I brushed it off at first, telling myself she was just stressed or busy. Then I noticed she was staying out later, coming home smelling like perfume I didn't recognize, and her stories about her work events started to sound flaky. One night, I came home early from work because I wasn't feeling great. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw Lisa's car parked outside the neighbor's house, Mike's house. It was 10 p.m. and I knew she wasn't supposed to be there. I thought maybe she was visiting a friend, but something didn't sit right. I decided to wait and see. About half an hour later, I saw her slip out the back door, looking around nervously, and then she got into Mike's car. I was stunned. I stood there in my driveway, watching her drive off, heart pounding. I didn't want to believe it, but the signs were all there. The next day, I started digging. I checked the phone records, and sure enough, there were dozens of calls and texts between Lisa and Mike, flirty, suggestive messages, even some explicit stuff. And then I found photos on her phone, screenshots of their conversation, some of her in bed with her legs spread, a clear sign she was having sex with him. I couldn't believe it. My wife, the woman I trusted with everything, was screwing our neighbor, and she had been doing it for months. The worst part: she'd been lying to my face the entire time, pretending to be the perfect wife and mother. I was furious, but I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I started gathering evidence. I needed proof, something concrete to show her I knew. I also wanted to see how far she'd go. I started checking her emails, bank statements, and even installed a hidden camera in our bedroom. I wasn't proud of it, but I had to protect myself. It was a mess. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and honestly like I'd been a fool for so long. How could I have missed all these signs? How could she have lied so convincingly? The day I found out about the affair was the day my world turned upside down. But that was just the beginning. What came next would be even more shocking. I discovered that Lisa wasn't just cheating, she was stealing from us too. Turns out, she'd forged my signature on some documents and stolen over $250, $0 from the estate my parents left us. I couldn't believe it. How could she do this? I thought I knew her, but she was a snake hiding under the skin of a perfect wife. The betrayal cut deep, but what hurt even more was realizing I'd been played for a fool all these years. That's when I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just let her get away with everything. I started planning my revenge, figuring out how to get justice, and most importantly, how to protect my kids from her lies and manipulation. It's been a roller coaster since then, full of sudden twists, anger, sadness, and a lot of questions about what I could have done differently. But I'll tell you this: once you find out the truth, there's no going back. And I refuse to let her ruin me or our kids anymore. After I gathered all the evidence, screenshots, bank statements, the hidden camera footage, the reality sank in even deeper. Lisa wasn't just cheating on me. She was outright stealing from us. That $250, $0 she managed to siphon from the estate was just the tip of the iceberg. I remember sitting in my study for hours, staring at the pile of documents and photos, feeling numb yet furious. I'd always thought we had a solid marriage, that we were building a future together, but she was just using me and lying through her teeth. The first thing I did was reach out to a lawyer. I told him everything about her affair, the forgery, the stolen money. I wanted to be sure I had a plan. I also started looking into how she managed to forge my signature so flawlessly. Turns out she'd been doing it for months, creating fake documents, signing my name on bank papers, estate forms, everything. I felt like I'd been blindsided. How could she do this? How could she lie to my face, pretend everything was fine, while secretly plotting to drain our future away? The hardest part was confronting her. I waited until she was alone one evening and I laid everything out on the table. I told her I knew about her affair with Mike, showed her the evidence, and explained that I also knew about the stolen money. Her reaction was classic Lisa. She started crying, calling me paranoid, accusing me of spying on her, saying I was overreacting. She said I was just jealous and that Mike was just a friend, that I was imagining things. She even had the nerve to claim I was controlling, that she needed a little excitement outside the marriage because I was so dull and boring. I couldn't believe her lies. She was spinning stories faster than I could process them. I told her I had enough evidence and that I wasn't going to let her get away with it. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "You're crazy. You're just jealous because I look better than you and I still have my youth. Mike and I are just friends and you're overreacting. You're always so insecure." That was the moment I realized she was a master manipulator. She'd been lying so well I almost started to doubt myself. But I knew the truth and I knew I couldn't stay silent. Emotionally, I was a mess. The shock turned into anger, then sadness. I felt betrayed by the woman I loved, the woman I married, the mother of my children. I kept thinking about how she'd lied to me every day, how she'd used me. The worst part was knowing that she'd been planning to take everything we built, our money, our home, our family, and run away with it. I felt like I'd been played for a fool, and that's a terrible feeling. The trust was shattered, and I wondered if I'd ever be able to look at her the same way again. Despite all that, I knew I had to be strategic. I couldn't just blow up everything without a plan. I contacted my lawyer, started documenting everything, and decided to fight for custody of the kids. I wasn't going to let her manipulate them or lie to them the way she'd lied to me. I also started to think about how I'd handle the financial mess she'd created. I knew she'd try to spin her version of events, but I had proof, lots of it, that would show her true colors. I also reached out to some friends and family, not to bash her but to get support. I needed to keep my head clear. I couldn't afford to let her gaslight me or make me doubt myself any more than I already had. The more I dug into her schemes, the more I realized she'd been planning this for months, maybe even years. The affair, the forgery, the theft, she'd been building her case to take everything and leave me with nothing. And honestly, that realization made my blood boil. I decided I wouldn't let her get away with it. I was going to fight, not just for my money but for my reputation and my kids' future. I knew her kind of woman. She'd do everything in her power to lie, manipulate, and turn everyone against me if she could. So I prepared myself for a long legal battle. I started gathering more evidence, talking to private investigators, even hearing a forensic accountant to trace the stolen money. I had to protect what was left of my life, and I wasn't going to let her win. Not without a fight. But I also felt scared. Scared that I might lose everything. My home, my kids, my sanity. It's a terrible feeling to realize the person you trusted most in the world is actually your biggest enemy. I kept telling myself I had to stay strong, focus on the facts, and do what was right. Still, every time I thought about her lying, cheating, and stealing, I felt a deep, aching pain that I knew wouldn't go away anytime soon. This was only the beginning of what's been a nightmare I can't wake up from. The legal process was a nightmare. I remember sitting across from my lawyer, trying to keep my composure while going over all the evidence I'd collected. Every document, every screenshot, every bank statement. It all painted a clear picture of her betrayal. Lisa, of course, denied everything at first. She spun stories about how I was overreacting, how I was paranoid, jealous, and just projecting my insecurities onto her. She even had the nerve to claim I was kidnapping our kids during the custody hearings, which was a flat-out lie. I knew she was just trying to muddy the waters and turn everyone against me, but I had proof. The messages, the forged signatures, the bank records, everything. I handed it over to my lawyer and he shook his head, clearly annoyed by her blatant lies and manipulation. I could see the wheels turning in his head, planning how to present everything in court. I remember feeling a mix of anger and desperation. I wanted her to pay for what she did, especially the theft. That money was supposed to be our safety net, our future, and she'd taken it like it was nothing. I kept thinking about how she'd used me, lied to my face, and then tried to turn the tables. The custody fight was just as intense. Lisa tried to paint herself as the perfect mother, claiming I was an unfit father because I worked long hours and was absent. She even accused me of kidnapping the kids during one of the hearings, completely false, of course. I knew her game. She wanted to make me look bad to sway the judge's opinion. But I had evidence of her affair, her lies, and the fact that she'd been sneaking out with Mike while the kids were home. I brought witnesses, our neighbors who saw her sneaking out late at night, friends who knew about her affair. It was a battle, and I knew I had to stay on top of everything to protect my kids. Throughout all this, I felt like I was living in a nightmare. The betrayal cut so deep I wondered if I'd ever trust anyone again. I was angry at her for destroying what we had, but I was also hurt. Deep down, I still loved her, or at least I thought I did. It was confusing, and honestly, I felt like I was losing my mind. I kept questioning myself. Did I miss the signs? Was there something I could have done differently? But deep down, I knew I couldn't change what she'd already done. All I could do now was fight for what was left and try to get some kind of justice. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her lies. She told everyone her version of events, that I was a jealous husband who couldn't handle her success, that I was controlling and abusive. She painted herself as the victim, the wronged wife. I heard from friends that she was spreading rumors, trying to turn people against me. It was infuriating. I didn't care about her lies anymore. I cared about the truth and protecting my kids. Still, it stung to see her out there, spinning her web of deception while I was fighting in court to keep what's ours. The financial mess was another headache. I hired a forensic accountant to trace the stolen money, and it turned out Lisa had transferred it to multiple accounts under fake names. She'd been planning this for a while. I also found out she'd taken out loans and maxed out credit cards in my name, another way she tried to cover her tracks. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of lies and deception. Every time I thought I had a handle on things, she'd throw another curveball. It was relentless. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and just kept pushing forward, knowing I had to be strong for my kids. One of the most shocking moments came when I found out she'd been secretly meeting with a divorce attorney behind my back, drafting papers to completely cut me out of the estate and the kids' lives. I couldn't believe she was so cold, so calculating. She even tried to claim I kidnapped the kids during a custody exchange, which was just a lie to make me look bad. I had witnesses and security footage to prove I was innocent, but the damage was done. It was clear she was willing to do whatever it took to win, even if it meant twisting the truth and destroying what little remained of our family. Looking back, I realized I was in survival mode. Every day was a battle against her lies, her manipulations, her schemes to take everything from me. I knew I had to stay one step ahead, keep my head clear, and focus on the facts. The pain of betrayal was unbearable, but I couldn't let it crush me. I had to be the one to fight for my kids, for my future, and for whatever shred of dignity I had left. I kept telling myself that someday justice would come, and she'd have to answer for everything she'd done. Until then, I just kept going, one step at a time, hoping I'd come out of this in one piece. The court battles dragged on for what felt like an eternity. Every hearing, every meeting with my lawyer was a reminder of how deep Lisa's lies ran. She continued to spin her stories, claiming I was an unfit father, accusing me of all kinds of fabricated nonsense to sway the judge. She played the victim so convincingly that I sometimes doubted myself. Was I really that bad? But then I looked at all the hard evidence I had gathered, and I knew the truth was clear. Still, Lisa's charm and manipulative tactics made the courtroom a battleground of words and deceit. She also doubled down on her accusations that I kidnapped the kids during custody exchanges. I knew she was trying to paint me as dangerous, unstable. But I had security footage, witnesses, and an airtight alibi for every single incident. Still, it was infuriating to have to fight so hard just to prove I was a loving father, not some monster she wanted everyone to believe I was. I watched her lie through her teeth, and each lie made me angrier because she was willing to destroy everything for her own selfish gain. Meanwhile, Lisa was busy trying to drain whatever money she could from our accounts. I discovered she'd transferred even more funds, this time, into offshore accounts under fake names. She'd been planning her escape for months, maybe even longer. I started to feel like I was fighting not just for custody, but for my entire future. The money she stole was supposed to help us buy a house, send the kids to college, and give us some stability. Now I was left with a mountain of debt, legal bills, and a broken trust I didn't know if I could ever rebuild. The emotional toll was brutal. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, thinking about her, about everything she'd done. I kept replaying all the signs I missed, all the moments I should have seen through her lies. I was angry at myself for not catching her sooner, for not seeing how she was slowly tearing us apart. I also felt a deep sadness. How could someone I loved so much turn out to be so cold and calculating? I'd trusted her with everything, and she'd betrayed me on every level. It was hard to accept that the woman I married was now just a stranger, someone capable of so much deception. The kids were caught in the middle of all this chaos. Lisa tried to turn them against me, telling them I was some kind of kidnapper or threat. She'd tell them I was dangerous, that I was trying to keep them away from her because I was jealous or insecure. But I had video calls, pictures, and witnesses who confirmed I was a good father. Still, seeing the confusion and fear in my children's eyes hurt worse than anything. I wanted to protect them from her lies, but she was relentless. It felt like she was trying to poison their minds, make them believe I was the villain. On top of everything, I found out she'd been secretly meeting with her attorney and even hired private investigators to dig up dirt on me. I couldn't believe how far she was willing to go. Her plan was clear: destroy me, take the kids, and walk away with the money. I felt like I was fighting a war I couldn't win, and a part of me wondered if I should just give up and walk away. But then I looked at my kids, and something inside me refused to back down. I owed it to them to fight for what's right, no matter how dirty she played. I also started to rebuild myself during this time. I saw a counselor to deal with the emotional fallout, anger, betrayal, heartbreak. I couldn't let her control my mind, my life. I realized I had to focus on what I could do, not what she was trying to manipulate me into believing. I started exercising more, working hard at my job, and reconnecting with friends who reminded me of who I was before all this chaos. It was a slow process, but I knew I had to keep my head clear if I wanted to win this fight. Every day felt like a battle. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, but I refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. I was determined to come out of this with my integrity intact and my children safe. I knew Lisa's game wasn't over, but I also knew I had enough evidence to expose her lies. The courtroom, the investigations, they were all just steps toward exposing her true nature. I kept telling myself that someday the truth would come out and she'd have to face the consequences of her actions. Until then, I just kept fighting, one day at a time. The final stretch of this nightmare has been the most intense. Court hearings reached their climax, and I could feel the tension in every word exchanged, every glance cast across the courtroom. Lisa was doing her best to spin her web of lies, claiming she was the victim, that I was an unstable, jealous husband trying to ruin her. She even brought up fabricated stories about me supposedly kidnapping the kids, stories so ridiculous that even the judge looked skeptical. But she had her tricks, her tears, her fake sincerity, and her carefully crafted stories. I knew she was trying to manipulate everyone, including the judge, into believing her version of events. What made things even more complicated was her relentless campaign to discredit me personally. She painted me as a monster, an unfit father who was emotionally unstable and violent. She told the court I was controlling, that I kept her isolated, and that I was jealous of her independence. It was all lies. I knew her playbook by now. She'd lie, spin stories, and twist the truth until she got what she wanted: control, money, and the kids. I had to stay calm, present my evidence, and keep my focus on my kids' well-being. The financial battle was just as brutal. I hired a forensic accountant who uncovered even more of Lisa's schemes. Turns out she'd been funneling money into secret bank accounts in foreign countries, trying to hide her theft. She'd forged signatures on estate documents, pulled out loans in my name, and even transferred some of the stolen money into her own accounts under fake identities. She was planning her escape, and I was just a pawn in her game. The amount she stole, over $250, $0, was just the beginning. I found out she had plans to take even more, to leave me with nothing. On the personal side, I was battered. The emotional toll was crushing. I'd wake up feeling hollow, angry, betrayed. I kept replaying all the moments I missed, all the signs I ignored. I questioned everything: my judgment, my marriage, my own worth. I had loved her so much, and now I saw her for what she really was: someone capable of deception on a scale I never imagined. The pain was raw, but I knew I had to stay strong for my kids, for myself. I couldn't let her destroy us completely. The kids were still caught in the crossfire. Lisa kept trying to turn them against me, whispering lies, convincing them I was dangerous or that I didn't want to see them. But I had evidence of my own: video calls, photos, friends, testimonies, that proved I was a good father. Still, seeing the confusion and fear in their eyes was heartbreaking. I could see her manipulation working on them, and it made me furious. I just wanted to protect them from her lies, from her greed, from her cold-hearted schemes. The turning point came when my lawyer presented all the evidence. The forged signatures, the stolen money, the affair, the lies, all laid bare. The judge looked at her with a mixture of disappointment and disbelief. I could see her trying to maintain her composure, but her facade cracked under the weight of the truth. In the end, the court ruled in my favor, not just for custody but also for restitution of the stolen funds. Lisa's lies and manipulation couldn't hold up against the mountain of proof I had. It was a hard-won victory, but it felt like justice. The aftermath has been a roller coaster. I've started the long process of rebuilding my life, repairing my relationship with the kids, and healing from the betrayal. Lisa, of course, refused to accept the court's decision. She tried to appeal, claiming I kidnapped the kids again, but the authorities had her on record trying to manipulate the situation. I've had to stay vigilant, knowing she'd try to come back with another scheme. I've also started therapy, not just for the emotional scars, but to learn how to trust again, how to rebuild my self-esteem after all the damage she caused. Looking back, I realize I learned some hard lessons. Trust is fragile, and people can surprise you in the worst ways. I also learned that sometimes you have to fight with everything you've got, legally, emotionally, personally, to protect what's yours. I've become more aware of the red flags, more cautious about who I let into my life. And I've come to accept that some betrayals cut so deep they change you forever. But I also know that I'm stronger than I ever thought possible. I survived her lies, her manipulations, her theft, and I'm determined to move on, better and wiser than before. If you're going through something similar, just remember, don't let anyone rob you of your dignity. Gather your evidence, stay calm, and fight for what's right. The truth might take time to come out, but it always does. And when it does, you'll see who really has your back. Now that everything's settled, or at least as settled as it's going to get, I've had time to reflect on what this whole nightmare has taught me. Honestly, I never thought I'd be the guy to go through something like this, but life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. Lisa's betrayal shattered my world, but it also forced me to dig deep and find a strength I didn't know I had. I realized that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to fully rebuild, but I can rebuild my own life and learn to move forward without her shadow looming over me. The aftermath is complicated. I now have full custody of the kids, and I'm doing everything I can to give them stability and love, more than I ever thought I'd have to do alone. It's been a tough road, balancing work, parenting, and healing, but I know I can't let her actions define our future. The stolen money is gone, and I'm working to recover what I can through legal means, but more importantly, I'm trying to focus on the here and now. My kids need me, and I owe it to myself to be the best father I can be, even after everything she put us through. One thing I've learned is the importance of vigilance. No matter how perfect someone seems, no one is immune to deception if they hide their true nature well enough. I was blindsided because I trusted her blindly. Now I'm more cautious. I pay closer attention to the little things, the signs that might seem insignificant but could be red flags. I also learned that no amount of money or success can replace genuine honesty and loyalty. Lisa's greed and lies cost us everything, and I refuse to let that happen again. I've also come to understand that healing isn't linear. Some days are better than others. Sometimes I still get angry or sad over what I lost, but I've come to accept that grief, betrayal, and pain are part of the process. The key is not to let those feelings consume you. I've started focusing more on myself, rebuilding my confidence, reconnecting with friends, and finding new passions. I even started volunteering at a local charity, trying to give back and find some sense of purpose beyond all this chaos. To anyone reading this who might be in a similar situation, I want to say, trust your instincts. Gather evidence if you need to, stand your ground, and don't let anyone manipulate or lie their way out of accountability. The truth will come out eventually, and you deserve to have your story heard. Protect your peace, your kids, and your dignity, because no one else will do it for you. It's a long road and it's not easy, but I promise you can come out the other side stronger. Finally, I've learned that forgiveness isn't about excusing what she did. It's about freeing yourself from the anger and bitterness that can consume you if you hold on to it. I won't forget what happened, but I'm choosing to focus on my future and the happiness I can still find. Lisa's gone from my life, and honestly, I'm relieved. I've found a new sense of purpose and a hope that someday I'll be able to trust again, slowly, carefully, and with better judgment. This experience has been brutal, but it's also been a wake-up call. I'll never let anyone treat me like that again. I'll never allow betrayal to define me. And most importantly, I'll never forget that even in the darkest moments, there's a flicker of hope, a chance to rebuild, and a reason to keep going. Life isn't about avoiding pain, it's about how you rise from it. And I'm determined to keep rising, stronger than ever.